Every time you watched Jackie Chan smile, you were staring at a highly trained ghost. The man plunging from 70-foot clock towers spent his entire life hiding from political assassins without even knowing it. You believe celebrity origins spring from raw ambition and lucky breaks. History delivered a Cold War espionage thriller instead, sealed tightly beneath a fake surname designed to completely erase a bloodline. How much of your own identity would you permanently delete to keep your children breathing? Charles Chan deleted absolutely everything. Your brain expects a standard Hollywood rags to riches fairy tale. The terrifying truth involves a hunted nationalist spy, a desperate opium smuggler, abandoned toddlers, and a 60-year silence. We rely on our family names to carry us forward through time. Fang Daolong knew his ancient name would get him killed. During the brutal Chinese Civil War of the 1930s and 1940s, he operated as an intelligence agent for Chiang Kai-shek's Kuomintang government. Communist forces swept to absolute power in 1949, triggering immediate violent purges across the mainland. Former operatives did not simply retire quietly to the countryside to farm vegetables. They vanished instantly, or they became highly visible, hunted targets. You sit comfortably reading this, perfectly secure in who your grandparents were. He possessed a majestic lineage stretching back to Tang Dynasty statesman Fang Xuanling, yet that immense nobility transformed instantly into a death sentence. The written character for Fang means square or four-sided, carrying deep, permanent echoes of structure, direction, and military honor. Prestige became a lethal tracker. Ancestral blood became a signed confession. To survive the political purge, he committed absolute social suicide. Do you truly understand the psychological violence required to violently cut your own ancestral anchor? He abandoned the grand, historic word Fang. He adopted his wife Li's far more common, utterly ordinary surname, Chan. You hear that simple name today and immediately picture flashing cameras and blinding global fame. He chose it precisely because it offered absolute featureless invisibility within the incredibly crowded streets of Chinese communities. The brilliant, desperate cover worked flawlessly for decades. He secured quiet, menial work as a simple cook at the French consulate in Hong Kong. No one ever noticed the silent man aggressively chopping vegetables. Are you beginning to sense the terrifying historical irony here? A disguise deliberately built for total anonymity slowly mutated into the most recognizable cinematic brand on the planet. Yet a man sprinting for his life rarely sprints alone. You assume classic love stories start with innocent, romantic glances across a crowded room. His began with a massive felony arrest. Shanghai in the late 1940s was a collapsing, terrifying nightmare of extreme hunger and chaotic war. Li, a young, isolated mother, had watched helplessly as a sudden Japanese bombing raid obliterated her first husband. Poverty tightens its suffocating grip until basic human ethics shatter completely. Desperation almost pushed her to sell her 10-year-old daughter, Yulan, just to feed her remaining children. She chose the violent criminal underworld instead. Smuggling black market opium through a heavily guarded military port carried fatal, immediate risks. Imagine the cold terror spiking through your veins as a government intelligence inspector stops you dead in your tracks. Fang Daolong found the hidden contraband. Criminal empires do not forgive mistakes. Li survived gangland life by aggressively reading the odds and acting fast before the window of opportunity slammed shut. You probably think of gangsters as hardened men with weapons. She was a grieving mother utilizing pure nerve and judgment to stay alive in an environment that actively hunted the weak. Judgment without nerve leaves a person completely frozen. Nerve without judgment gets a person buried. She perfectly balanced both to outsmart violent racketeers and keep her children breathing. That is not a glamorous origin story. That is a blood-soaked masterclass in calculating acceptable risks when failure means absolute starvation. He possessed the immediate legal authority to destroy her fragile life right there on the docks. Instead, the battle-hardened spy looked down and noticed a single blue flower pinned to her torn clothes. That delicate blossom signaled sudden widowhood in traditional Chinese culture. Why does profound mercy suddenly strike men actively trained by the military to feel absolutely nothing? He recognized the shared metallic scent of desperate survival. He let the terrified smuggler walk free. They did not fall deeply in love because they were charming, balanced opposites. They violently collided because they were standing in the exact same political storm. You rely heavily on trust built slowly over decades of perfectly safe interactions. Their entire marital foundation was a split second of shared guilt and illegal grace on a highly dangerous dock. Safety, unfortunately, demands a horrific lingering toll that crosses generations. When the terrified couple fled the crumbling mainland to Hong Kong around 1949, they did not bring everyone. Can you even fathom walking away from your own weeping flesh and blood? Charles left behind two tiny, confused sons from his first marriage, 8-year-old Fang Shide and 2-year-old Fang Shisheng. Li Li abandoned her two vulnerable daughters, Chan Yulan and Chan Guilan, to the ensuing chaos. The iron bamboo curtains slammed down hard, permanently sealing the 4 children inside communist China. While you watch a globally adored superstar conquer Hollywood red carpets, 2 forgotten half-brothers labored silently as a humble mail carrier and a dirt farmer in Anhui province. Geography violently froze the family tree. Jackie grew up totally blind to this invisible carnage. You think you clearly know your own family's history. He lived inside a carefully managed gap, shielded completely by a lie that breathed exactly like truth. His parents passed down the heavy atmosphere of paranoia without ever speaking a single syllable of it out loud. He truly believed he was merely the only child of poor, simple, uneducated laborers. That constitutes the true, hidden violence of historical reinvention. The boy received an armor of physical protection, but he unknowingly paid for it with massive psychological absence. Have you ever wondered what silent, terrifying fears your own parents masked just to keep you blissfully safe? At 6 years old, this oblivious child entered a literal physical crucible. The China Drama Academy did not teach fun, after-school hobbies. It demanded a brutal decade of unrelenting physical torment. Try to imagine waking up to endless, grueling drills of acrobatics, gymnastics, singing, and martial arts where extreme pain was merely the punctuation of the morning. Most ordinary humans shatter entirely under that sustained, merciless pressure. He thrived, but not purely due to lucky athletic genetics. Think deeply about the hidden frequency of his household. His father compartmentalized mortal terror as an undercover spy. His mother read the shifting, lethal odds of the criminal underworld. The boy absorbed this exact rhythm of enduring the unbearable long before he ever threw a theatrical punch. Every single mistake inside the China Drama Academy carried a vicious physical price. The instructors did not gently ask the body what it preferred to do. They violently ordered the body what it would become. You complain about a sore muscle after a light workout. These children were systematically bent, stretched, bruised, and viciously corrected until every fluid movement no longer felt separate from their own breathing. It was absolute, totalitarian control. The system literally fused performance with survival. The boy learned that intense physical pain was never a valid reason to stop the scene. Pain was simply the mandatory admission price for mastering the craft. Cinematic stunts are simply brutal survival problems translated into public spectacle. You eagerly watch him leap from a burning building and call him wildly fearless. He was actively terrified. Anyone can jump recklessly into the dark. Only a master calculator rapidly runs the physics, deeply feels the terror, and hurls his fragile body into the void anyway. Look at the legendary 1983 fall in Project A, a 72-foot freefall through 2 flimsy fabric awnings straight to the hard earth. Your stomach drops just visualizing the sheer height. His violently cracked skull, dislocated pelvis, and shattered vertebrae are not clever movie magic. They are the bloody medical receipts of a man actively pushing human physical limits. Most people feel a natural physical limit, then immediately obey it. Jackie built an entire cinematic empire on approaching the limit, studying it intensely, and stepping directly through it. You watch him use chairs, ladders, tables, railings, and windows to completely dismantle armed attackers. That is not random creativity. It is extreme adaptation under massive pressure. Put him in an empty room and it becomes a dangerous puzzle. Put him in a crowded room and danger suddenly becomes a weapon to be redirected, timed, and turned violently back onto itself. He bet his own flesh on increasingly dangerous sequences because he understood probability in a deeply physical, almost supernatural way. He never just fought blindly inside a room, he meticulously solved it. The father adapted his entire identity to cheat a firing squad. The son adapted his immediate environment to cheat terminal gravity. Do you see the terrifying, beautiful symmetry? You are directly witnessing the psychological inheritance of espionage and smuggling channeled straight into a camera lens. Risk was never a cheap thrill for this specific bloodline. Risk was a highly negotiated physical contract. The global public cheered endlessly for a slapstick comedian, completely unaware they were wildly applauding a generational trauma response. Every impossible grinning rebound carried the distinct echo of parents who simply refused to die in Shanghai. Massive secrets kept for survival eventually harden into impenetrable stone. Charles Chan locked the explosive truth away for roughly 60 years. Telling his famous son the truth too early meant tying him directly to a buried political explosive. You guard your own small secrets carefully, but would you wait until you were elderly and nearing your deathbed to finally speak your real name? In 2003, the invisible shield finally cracked wide open. The documentary Traces of a Dragon. Jackie Chan and his lost family ripped the false facade clean off the family. Charles tearfully confessed the ancient Fang lineage, the espionage operations, and the violently abandoned brothers. He waited until the primal urge to preserve the bloodline finally overpowered the desperate need to protect his son. A revelation of this staggering magnitude shatters a man's psychological foundation. How exactly do you process a glittering life built entirely on a purposeful, massive void? He discovered he possessed 2 older, living half-brothers struggling in poverty on the mainland. He learned of 2 older half-sisters deeply scarred by wartime starvation and loss. Your identity likely feels incredibly fixed and solid right now. His morphed instantly from a scrappy working-class hero into the scattered, confused fragment of a broken dynasty. Shared blood does not magically repair decades of enforced silence. Charles had started sending money and letters in the late 1980s, but it could not erase the absence. 10 full years passed slowly after the documentary aired, before Jackie finally stood face to face with his brothers. decades of pure absence cannot be casually swept under the rug. When Charles finally began sending money and fragile letters to his abandoned sons in the late 1980s, it did not feel like a joyous restoration. It felt like throwing a tiny rope bridge across a massive, terrifying canyon that had already permanently scarred the landscape. You cannot mail a lost childhood back in an envelope. They could only announce, far too late, that the man who vanished into the night was still breathing somewhere. And the most painful part? Jackie himself still did not fully comprehend the vast, broken shape of this story while those letters were being mailed. In 2013, the global icon finally traveled to Wuhu. Tears flowed heavily in Guangzhou, marking the brutal physical recognition of 40 entirely lost years. Think intensely about the birthdays, the petty arguments, the shared family funerals entirely stolen by shifting geopolitics. You can wire cold money across a vast canyon, but you cannot ever buy back a stolen childhood. The aging brothers wept because the bloodline survived where shared existence had failed completely. Fong Shide, the tired mailman, and Fong Shisheng, the weathered farmer, stood awkwardly next to the most famous action star on planet Earth. The stark visual contrast exposes the horrific, unfeeling randomness of global history. Yet the most staggering twist of all remains the international public's total blindness. Western media utterly obsessed over the martial arts prodigy, completely ignoring the massive ghost story sitting right beneath the surface. Hollywood fame usually acts as a massive, intrusive spotlight. Here, the intense glare of celebrity paradoxically deepened the protective shadow. You fully expect hungry reporters to aggressively dig up every scandalous root. They missed it entirely because the disguise was far too incredibly boring to ever question. Nobody interrogates the plain, simple name Chan. Charles miraculously outsmarted the entire world by simply wearing the most common mask available. We romantically think of ancestry as a stable, unbroken thread passed down with immense pride. Sometimes that fragile thread only survives because someone had the ruthless, terrifying courage to sever it. What hidden, silent fractures sit quietly in your own family tree right now? You might be carrying a name radically altered by a forgotten historical crisis, completely unaware of the ghosts walking right beside you. Jackie Chan inherited staggering, unprecedented global success. He also inherited a severely delayed, deeply haunting self-knowledge. Every bone-crushing cinematic stunt, every desperate physical leap, every smiling recovery on camera was an unconscious, bleeding tribute to the mother who outplayed the underworld and the father who outran the firing squads. You look at the silver screen and see a joyful entertainer. Look closer at the scars. You are actively witnessing the ultimate act of historical defiance. The ancient Fang name was buried so deep under the dirt of fear that it took half a century to resurrect it. Jackie Chan never truly lived a simple lie. He lived the most perfectly executed, grueling survival strategy of the 20th century. Next time you see a famous face adored by millions, ask yourself a truly chilling question. What highly dangerous, unspeakable truth did their desperate grandparents bury just so that exact face could safely exist today?